Aloha, everyone. Mahalo for joining us this morning. Just like to introduce myself if you're new to our webinars. My name is Lisa Leilani Ka'anoi. I'm the engagement specialist from the Healthcare Workforce Development Center, known as Mauliola Ma Lama Lama at Papa'olalokahi, the Native Hawaiian Health Board. So mahalo for joining us today and those who will be joining us via the recording. So if this is your first time joining us, in the future, if there's a webinar you'd like to see but aren't able to, as long as you register, you will receive the recording. We are a little bit behind on the previous presentations and the recording. We are still working on editing them, but we'll make sure to get them out. And then for questions or comments, you may use the Q&A feature or chat feature located on the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Also, if this is the first time you're joining us, you will be automatically added to our email list for future presentations. And then at last, at the end, there will be a pop-up that will ask for you to share your mana'o or feedback. This is how we get topics for future webinars. And if you have to run, don't worry, we'll send out a follow-up email on Monday to give you a chance to submit your mana'o then. So welcome. And today our webinar is actually scheduled from 10 to 11:30, just as an FYI. And I will be introducing our guest speaker. I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Kamanaopono Crabbe, who is Chief Executive and Leader for Hawaii. So Dr. Kamana'o M. Crabbe serves as a seasoned spokesperson and representative for the Native Hawaiian community on Native Hawaiian rights, social inequities, community health and resilience, and current social, cultural, educational, economic, and political issues affecting Native Hawaiians, Hawaii, and the Pacific. Dr. Crabbe has focused his personal, academic, and professional career toward improving Native Hawaiian health and well-being. He sits on several high-level policy and governing boards around the world and Hawaii. His executive leadership is demonstrated through civic positions, serving on the Hawaii Executive Conference Advisory Board, Executive Committee of the Assembly of Austronesian Leaders, IUCN World Conservation Congress Steering Committee member, former president and member of Na Limahana o Lono Puha Native Hawaiian Health Consortium, and the Native Hawaiian Criminal Justice Task Force as vice chair. He was director of psychology training at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center from 2008 to 2010. In 2010, he joined the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as its research director, focusing on socio-demographic, land, culture, history, and educational and economic research, where he began some of Hawaii's most innovative projects. In March 2012, Dr. Crabbe was appointed to Chief Executive Officer for OHA, a semi-autonomous government agency whose charge is to empower Native Hawaiians and strengthen Hawaii. As OHA's kapohana, the main post of the Hale, he grounded the organization in Kukuluho, his vision to reestablish and rebuild the mana of Kanaka Maoli, or Native Hawaiians. Dr. Crabbe directed OHA's efforts in addressing its strategic priorities of Aina, land and water, Ma'omeheu, culture, Ea, governance, Ho'ona'oao, education, Ho'okahua Vaivai, economic self-sufficiency, and Mauliola, health. He served as the Kapohana CEO for the Kohala Institute at Iole from 2019 to 2021, where he led the organization on a new vision to be a world leader in sustainable thinking through a model 21st century ahapua'a, where land is chief and man is steward. KII strives to accomplish its aspirations via a foundation of indigenous, Native Hawaiian ancestral knowledge and wisdom grounded in the stewardship of 24 2,400 acres of cultural, natural, environmental, and elemental assets and resources using the ancient Ahupua'a Moku land system structure, cultural place-based educational programs, and a Pu'uhonua sanctuary as a nexus of culture and sustainability in Kohala, Hawaii Island. Currently, he is executive counselor on the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Affairs for the Asian Pacific Islander Health Forum, a national policy advocacy organization based out of Washington, D.C. and Oakland, California. Dr. Crabbe advises and provides strategic counsel to the CEO and executive team on a range of health issues, as well as strategic planning, community engagement, outreach, and health policy at a national level concerning Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. He has received numerous cultural distinctions and formal awards recognizing his executive leadership and accomplishments, such as the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education Leadership Award, for Native Hawaiian Advancements Native Hawaiian Advocate Award, the Hawaii Psychological Association's Patrick H. DeLeon PhD Lifetime Achievement Award, and American Psychological Association's Minority Fellowship Program Predoctoral Fellowship, among many, many others. Uplifting the mana and mauliola of the Hawaiian community through transformation and Indigenous excellence are pillars of his leadership values. Crabbe serves his community as a ho'oponopono practitioner, skilled chanter and orator, and aha ava ceremony and protocol expert. In 2006, he established the nonprofit organization Ahakane, Foundation for the Advancement of Native Hawaiian Males. He earned his doctorate in clinical psychology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa and served countless families, youth, and communities as a licensed clinical psychologist for over 12 years. He is guided by this ancient Hawaiian proverb, knowing that every good leader needs a strong foundation for their work and vision. Ke kahu mamua, mahope ke kukula. The foundation first, the building afterwards. By Pukui, 1983, Olelo Nauiao, number 2459. And as a side note, his favorite mea ono is blueberry cream cheesecake or mango cream cheesecake made by his mother. So I'd like to now welcome Dr. Kamanaopono Crabbe. Oh, you're on mute.
Mahalo, Lisa, for that that long intro, but I appreciate it. It seems like I saw my whole career pass by. No laila, vilina mai ke aloha aku ia ka kua pau e na hoa makamaka I ka lehu no hoi no ke ia paeina ni. Mai ka pi'i ana kala ma kumakahi I ka wahi o kani ke au ki ei a hiki ke kokoro ana kala I ke komohani ka moku o lehua no hoi. A I ke ala mau moku I ka iri la o papahana moku. Aloha mai ke aloha no, aloha mai kako. Again, mahalo Lisa for that very gracious introduction. And the invitation to be part of the Mauliola Malabalaba lecture series. I'm very honored to be the guest speaker today. And I'll be sharing about, let me see if I can pull it up here. Yes. I'll be sharing my experience and strength and hope in terms of, you know, many of the pillars who I looked up to that not only have supported my academic and professional career, but also had guided me in a lot of the work that I've done. And hopefully by presenting it in a Hawaiian way, you'll gain some, you know, hopefully you gain something from it. Uh, but mostly, I think, is carrying on the legacy and the mo'olelo and just honoring the people who came before me is very important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mana and mo'okuauhau, the importance of uh, about this energy and continuing the legacy from those who have passed it on to me. And so, Iulu no Kalala Ike Kumu is a well-known olelo no eau. The branches grow because of the trunk. Without our ancestors, we would not be here. Is a very central theme. I always talk about kamea nui no kamauli olo kapilina, kapilina, kapilino kako ike ao holo ko'a. A most paramount for humanity amongst us as Kanaka, especially, is the well-being and the importance of relationships. Relationships among ourselves as man to man, the relationship between us and our environment, our ecology, from Mauka to Makai, from Iluna to Ilalo, from the heavens to the earth, and lastly, into the realm of the ancestors, is very important in maintaining that bond. So our vitality of as Kanaka are very important to our Mauliola, our overall life, health and well-being. So that's why community kinships amongst Ohana is very important. Upholding the balance with our ancestral deities, and I've shared how we live harmoniously within the natural elements of our universe. And here is, my ohana. That's a Thanksgiving dinner we had years ago. My mom is in the red here with many of my mom's ohana and my grand uncle, and this is my paternal grandparents. And I love to surf when I can. I just went out this past Tuesday. Was about like 4 to 6 feet. He caught some waves. I like to start off on mana, and then later on you see why. Is because I think mana is in one way our cultural identity. And I heard about it growing up as a child in my family and in our community, but it really wasn't until I started my academic career in psychology in the early 1990s, and then continued throughout my career in the 2000s, 2010, and to current. And so I think mana is not just individual, but it's collective. Could be ohana in your halau, in your basketball team, your work team, and it's a force, meaning we inherit mana not only in our DNA, in the biological makeup of who we are, our physical attributes of our ancestors, of our parents. We can inherit authority or like rank within our families. The older sibling, like kaikua'ana and kaikaina, the older sibling, younger sibling. We can inherit heirlooms. We inherit ike ku'una, ancestral knowledge. We inherit mo'olelo, history and folklore about our past. But we have it. It's a matter of how we nurture it, and it comes out. Inherited mana or is catapulted or nurtured in combination with acquired mana. Acquired mana is knowledge that we learn from someone, either formally or informally, whether it's from your kupuna, whether it's from school, your professor, your mentor, hula halau, your kumuhula. And a lot of times it's based on your experiences in life, your career, your academic path. But it has to be built up. You have to kind of have your skills, your knowledge, and the wisdom you have as part of your experience. And in the combination of inherited and acquired mana is what people see in your character, in what you project, whether you're a leader or whether you're part of a team or part of a organization. You contribute individually as well as collectively in the success of what you do. And mana is spiritual, you know. As I shared in the previous slide about Mauliola, total health and well-being, about our life, our lifespan. We are just part of humanity making a contribution to hopefully improving our community, our lahui, and making the world a better place, but also collectively. So we're part of a ohana, a community, and so forth. I talk a lot about this because I think today, as we walk through our life, we really are traveling or walking in both worlds, the Western world, and as well as a Kanaka, a native Hawaiian. And it's a challenge to discover our Hawaiianness, our cultural identity, and then holding on to it, establishing a foundation, while at the same time making a living, putting food on the table in a Western society. So it's very important to understand where we are in that trajectory of life, life path or development of not only our cultural identity, but also our mana as Kanaka in our own homeland. I like to start with my ohana. Here is my mom with her mother, my maternal grandmother. My mother is Rose Na'awao Pelayo, and this is her mom, Rose Kale Na'awao. She was pure Hawaiian from Kipahulu. My mom was born in Wahiawa and then raised in Mo'iliili, where I was born and raised. This is my great grandparents here, Solomon Kana'awao Hueva'a, and my maternal great grandmother, Julia Kawai Kaunu. They come from Kipahulu and Hana Maui. And here is my grand uncle, Robert Koho'okele Na'awao in the circle. I always acknowledge him, and I'll share a little bit why. He was very close to my family and my ohana. And these are my parents, Mogo Kaleo Kalana Kila Crabbe. My father, he's a retired fire captain, and my mother, Rose Makana'awao Crabbe. This is a picture when they lived in La'iopua in Kailua Kona, Hawaiian homestead there in Kona. I have fond memories of them. How do you go back? I'll share. I always grew up what I call is a traditional Hawaiian family. You know, if you ever heard of the Keolai Kapono Beamer song, Mr. Sancho Lee, and then when they get to the part of Mr. Kamakawiwa Ole having not too much of nothing, that's how I felt growing up. I'm the second youngest of seven kids. We grew up in a two-bedroom house with the seven of us, or three-bedroom house, and then we later moved into the back of our house where we had a nicer home. But I grew up where kids were seen but not heard, very disciplined. I always talk about it. We grew up with Hawaiian discipline, but I think nowadays, if you discipline, kids would call the CPS on you. So we would get a lot of dirty lickies, but that was discipline in my days from my parents and stuff. But we turned out pretty good. I graduated high school from Kamehameha schools a long time ago. And then when I graduated high school, I fell into what is called the post-high school local boy syndrome. I used to love and surf, body surf with my friend. Then we would go to Sandy's. We loved to drink Budweiser beer at the time, and then was very much into Bob Marley music in those days. And so we kind of lived a carefree life. And then in my late teens, early 20s, I moved on. I lived with my friend them in San Francisco, and I got pretty kolohe. And I came home. My mom asked me to come home, and I actually had to go to rehabilitation for alcohol and substance abuse and recover. And when I came home, my grand uncle here in the yellow, my mom sent me to him because at that time, I didn't really know like a psychiatrist or family therapist. So I always I went into Hawaiian ohana therapy with my grand uncle, who hanai'd me when I was about like 20, 21. Hanai in the sense that, I spent several years with him, and he was able to teach me Olelo Hawaii, our mo'okua hau. And he's the one that really encouraged me to go back to school. So I acknowledge my ohana, my parents, my grandmother, and my grand uncle for steering me through my academic career. And throughout my career, both academically and professionally, I've had the opportunity to meet very esteemed elders and kupuna in my lifetime. For Ho'oponopono are these four actually, kupuna. Entia Benapiahi from Keokaha Hilo. I trained with her in the late 90s in Ho'oponopono. Auntie Malia Craver, while she was at Queen Liliuokalani Children's Center. Olohi Richard Paglina Wan, who was a Olohe or master Lua instructor teacher. And Earl Kava'a, who currently is living today. I've known him since the early 1990s, and he's been a great mentor to me, as well as Kumu, in terms of sharing his knowledge, not only on culture, but Ho'oponopono. On the left here is Olohe Umikai and Kali Puna Richards. We know each other because we all trained in Kapalua, Ku'ialua in the early 90s through 2000s. Umi is a master carver in weapons, and then Kali Puna is known for being on the Hokulea voyage in 1976 to Tahiti, and he's very active in the Polynesian Voyaging Society. And then in the center here is my kumu, Dr. Hokulani Hope Padilla. As Lisa had shared, I started in mid-1990s in chanting and ritual customary ceremonies. with her. I was able to learn Aha'ava or Ava ceremony, which I'll share a little bit more. And then lastly is Dr. Kekuni Blaisdell. He'll be a central part of what I'm talking about today in terms of a mentor and leadership. Kekuni, he was he was a pillar in our community for a long time. He was not only known for his political activism in terms of self-governance and self-determination of Native Hawaiians, but he was really the kupuna or the grandfather of Hawaiian health in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. And it's because of his leadership many of us are today. And he was my mentor. He was on my doctoral dissertation committee. And he is the one that really I learned and benefited from his teachings in Mana, in which I'm sharing with you today. And I wanted to, part of this mo'okupuno or genealogy of elders or others who really worked with Kekuni in the 80s and then 90s, 2000s, which created many things in terms of establishing the infrastructure and the network of Papa'ololoka'i, the Native Hawaiian healthcare systems, the programs at the John A. Burns School of Medicine, like Imi Ho'ola, as well as the Department of Native Hawaiian Health, John A. Burns School of Medicine, many other things. These individuals are Dr. Noah Emmett Aluli. He's a family practice physician on the island of Molokai. He was part of the original Ku'e Kia'i for Kaho'olawi and stopping the bombing of Kaho'olawi. It was very integral in the negotiations with the Navy and the military to return Kaho'olawi back to the Lahui. Joanne Stark, who was the executive director for Imihale under Papa'olalokai in the 90s and 2000s. She worked very closely with Emmett, and she was a really good researcher, as well as strong advocate for improving Native Hawaiian health on good data, good research, and community-based participatory research. A very prolific author and writer. Dr. Ben Young is a psychiatrist. When I was going to school, there weren't many Native Hawaiians in clinical psychology. And Ben Young was a mentor of mine, or I looked up to him a lot because you just didn't have many Native Hawaiian role models in health. But he was a great historian and a great storyteller. And he also played ukulele and a great carver. I just received, in fact, a couple of days, he sent me a plaque of my name. I can show it you right here. It's all blurry, but I just received it from him this past week. And then Hardy Spoor. I knew him growing up because he was a referee for football when I played for Kamehameha. And then later on, after I graduated and entered the health field, I knew him as the executive director for Papa'ololokahi in the 90s, and he got me really involved. So with Kekuni and this core team, these individuals really helped to nurture me in my career, particularly because I was a Native Hawaiian healthcare scholarship recipient that benefited from going to school in health, in clinical psychology. And it was through that scholarship in my career at the University of Hawaii Manoa, in which they followed me throughout time and really supported me on my development. I share this is because they were just a few of many Native Hawaiian leaders that was part of the Iola Task Force report in 1985. And the reason why I share that is because if you don't know about it, I think anyone going in the health field should really, these are like your legacy documents and study. And it was really documenting the health disparities of our people in chronic disease, mental behavioral health, nursing industry, dental, nutrition, and culture. And so even before the framework of social determinants of health, to me, Emmett, Kekuni, Joanne, Ben, Young, and Hardy, they were really ahead of their time. And they took time to go to Congress in Washington, D.C. to push this legislation forward that led to the Native Hawaiian Healthcare Act of 1988. And it's because of that advocacy, that leadership, that was able to solidify funding specifically for Native Hawaiians to set up a health network system to begin to address improving Native Hawaiian health and well-being. They couldn't have done it, just by themselves. And the legacy of the Native Hawaiian health story really is about the political leverage at that time in the 70s, 80s, and then 90s that built up was because of the Hawaii delegation in combination with others. And leading that was Senator Inouye here on the left and Pinky Thompson, which helped to establish Papa'ololokahi, Alulike as others, as well as to even push for the approval of the Native Hawaiian Healthcare, the Native Hawaiian Education Act. And their team in Congress in Washington, D.C. in the 80s, 90s was Senator Daniel Akaka. And really pivotal was Esther Kiaina, who was chief of staff for Senator Akaka. The delegate from American Samoa here, Eni Faleomavenga, was as part of their team, and the delegate from Guam, Robert Underwood. And it was really because of this team, in addition with Pinky's leadership here in Hawaii, and having the vision to advocate so that there were resources and really the beginnings of a infrastructure for Hawaiian governance, such as Papa'ololokai in health, Native Hawaiian education scholarships, vocational job development through Alulike. And I really feel it was very visionary at the time. And so Kekuni, Emmett, Joanne, Ben, and Hardy worked with this team in DC and to help build Kukulu. Kukulu Ho was a model that I brought to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And what it really means is Kukulu is to build, to erect, to construct, and Ho is to anu, as in to rebuild, to re-erect, to reconstruct, to reclaim, to reassert our mana as Native Hawaiians in health, in our self-determination, and through culture values. it's really nice to see, and I commend Sherry Daniels, the current executive director from Papa'ololokai, is because they were able to continue their work of the Iolamau Task Force report in 1985. And then I've reviewed in 2019, they published Iolamau Amau, the next generation of Native Hawaiian health. So it's an update, you know. It's an update to that work over these past, 30 years. And continuing on. And it's nice to see that they'll be continuing the legacy of a summit next year. I just heard from Sherry announced that yesterday in a panel at CNHA, a summit. And the reason why is because I was at this summit in 1998. Ka'uhane Lokai was put on by Papa'ololokai on Native Hawaiian health and wellness. And many people were brought in from the Pai Aina, each island, Hawaii, Moko, Keawe, Maui, Molokai, Lanai, Kauai, to be part of an AHA or gathering to really discuss the importance of improving the health and well-being of our lahui. But most of all, really trying to, again, just advocate, get the word out. And what I remember about then was that it was really about the continuation of working with community. That was very important. And at that time, community was part of the dialogue and discussion in improving our well-being with the leadership in Washington, DC, and then here in Hawaii on the ground, advocating for health services. So, just like how Kekuni sat on my dissertation committee, and Hardy, Ben, Emmett, and Joanne mentoring me, I found myself in a similar path. And so here's, in 2002, I graduated at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, and Kekuni was able to attend my graduation. Usually you get a professor from your department. Unfortunately, my chair at the time was in Florida. And fortunately, I asked Kekuni to help cap me. You put on a cap, and that signifies you're graduated. And here is Kealoha Fox. When I went to OHA, I asked her to come to be part of our research team there. I knew her because when I was at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center, she was doing her practicum training there, and she was really interested in Hawaiian health and Hawaiian concepts of healing. So I had asked her to come to OHA to continue her education or learning with me. Her doctoral dissertation was on Kukulu Ola Ho, was rebuilding the Native Hawaiian health healing system. And her specialty that I helped nurture her in was on ma'i, on different types of ma'i, and a taxonomy of Hawaiian illnesses as part of rebuilding the knowledge of our kupuna in La'au, in Ho'oponopono, in Lomi Lomi. And here is her graduation in 2017. She graduated within the Johnny Bird School of Medicine, Department of Comprehensive Integrated Medicine. And she currently is at the Aloha Care Health Insurance Company and has led that company in providing traditional healing services like la'au, lomi lomi, ho'oponopono, aipono, through insurance, through subsidizing those services through insurance. So I'm very happy to see that she's taking her knowledge that, you know, in what she's learned about health, and then actually applying it through policy advocacy, and then converting it into actual programs and services at Aloha Care. And so mentoringship is part of mana, like inheriting the knowledge, the ike ku'una, the ancestral knowledge from those who taught it to you. And for me, it was Kikuni and Emmett and Joanne and Ben and Hardy, many others, Etiabi, Malia Craver, you know, Earl Kava'a, Hokulani, Umi, Kalipuna. And then really passing that down, passing knowledge down, passing wisdom down to the next generation. Here is Kealoha and I. She was very helpful with me in helping to publish Mana Lahui Kanaka, which talks a lot about manifesting mana, how we do it individually within our families and within our lahui. I am also not only my professional career in health, in what I do, but also as a cultural practitioner. I guess my teaching as a kumu, as my kumu had taught me, and she's right here, Hokulani Holt. I was part of A'akani. They had a grant to teach Hawaiian language, in perpetuating Hawaiian language through leadership mentoring program and ceremony. And so from 2016 to 19, I trained men in Ava ceremony, and here they are, Nakani Avalani, not just on how to do Hawaiian ceremony, but actually how to elevate language in the use of chants in ceremony, in kaka'olelo or oration. And I'm glad to know that Kala Domingo is part of Papa Ololokai's team in conducting health research here. So in a way, he's benefiting from, you know, my training through my kumus that came before me, and now to me is a new chapter within Papa Ololokahi and the next generation of advocates in health and Mauli Ola. Here is our Papa Loi Loi. These were kumu in their own right, in their own traditional cultural practice that was part of, you know, in the Western way or academia, you have like a dissertation committee of doctors or experts in a subject matter area like health or psychology or social work or medicine. In the Hawaiian sort of cultural practice, when Haumana graduate from a certain school of learning and achieve a certain rank, you know, you go through a very intense uniki process of traditional foods. It's like a rites of passage, and you have to demonstrate your knowledge before masters. So Keola Chan, who also came to me at OHA as part of the research with Kealoha. And it was those two that I shared the knowledge that Kikuni and many others had shared with me. And he went into applying Mauli Ola knowledge to Kapao Olonopuha, which is a Lomi La'au school of learning and training the future practitioners of his tradition. And he assembled, Mai Kumu Hokulani Hopadela. We have Mehana Hine here, who's also a Kumuhula, Kaiulani Odom, who's a Kumuhula, but also studied with Uncle Herb Ho, Tammy Ho them in Aipono, and others as part of the esteemed Kumu that oversaw the Uniki process of his Hamana, I believe were 11. And again, my mentoring of Keola and his Hamana through this process, they just Uniki this past April, I believe, 2022. And so now they have 11 new Lomi Lomi La'au practitioners throughout our Pai Aina. So as you can see, it's not just me in my Western world of academia and professional life, but it's also in my cultural path as a practitioner and still being part of growing Mauli Ola for our Lahui. And then lastly, e Mawana Kamo'olelo, the legacy lives on. In a way, I feel like I'm kind of following the path. I'm a little older now. As you can see, I have gray hair here. And now I have very dark hair here because it's fabulous when you can reinvent yourself. But I just really wanted to honor these people and to keep, it's very important to keep the mo'olelo, telling the mo'olelo because that is you are telling our story, the Native Hawaiian health story, the story of our people, our lahui. And we must never, never, never forget. And for me, it's these people who made a difference in my life that I'm here before you sharing in this webinar. So it's Emmett and Kikuni here. Joanne, she and I would go and visit Kikuni in his last years as he was ailing with his health. And Kikuni's daughter, Nalani, who's a psychiatrist, well-established psychiatrist. We knew each other because we worked at the Native Hawaiian Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center in the behavior health program there. So there's another connection between Nalani and I through her father. And then Hardy, in my introduction, Lisa talked about me being the president as part of Nalimahana Olonopuha Native Hawaiian Health Consortium. But Hardy, Keawe, Aimoku, Kaholokula, and I were all part of that early beginning with Hardy's help. So it's these kinds of people who nurtured me and Keawe and many others. And I feel like through their leadership, I learned how to mentor others. And then by mentoring others, you assume the role of leader through being a kumu to others. And so we have the Native Hawaiian healthcare systems on each island. We have the Department of Native Hawaiian Health, Imi Ho'ola at the John A. Burns School of Medicine. I know Dr. Nalina Andrade did great work with her research team under the Department of Psychiatry at the Department of John A. Burns School of Health, Department of Psychiatry there. And now she's at the Queens Health Systems there, forging on how Queens can provide greater health services to our lahui. And many others that go back to 1985, the Eola Task Force report, Native Hawaiian Healthcare Act of 1988. And so, this is the legacy we have today. And my small role, I believe, and so I think my role was when I became the research director at Office of Hawaiian Affairs in 2010, and then later as the CEO in 2012, was really how to elevate Native Hawaiian health. And, we did reports on Kane and Wahine well-being. We provided a legislation that was passed through the state Senate, the state legislature of codifying services through the state planning department on Native Hawaiian health, and more asking the state to do more than just health disparities, but we really need to focus on better intervention, prevention of services to improve the well-being in chronic diseases, behavioral health, and welfare. I think that's it. And so I'll turn it back over to Lisa and Kainalu. In closing, what I'll share is through my teachings with Kekuni and others, mana, I've been a staunch believer of mana. And so because of their mana and knowledge, it helped me to grow as a Native Hawaiian male, a Native Hawaiian in health, my health career, and even beyond, not only in Washington, D.C., but the opportunity to traverse the Pacific Ocean and engage with other Polynesian and Pacific Islanders and all the way in Asia. I never thought my career would be that grand, but I've always been cognizant of carrying that message of Mauliola and mana throughout our people. I want to mahalo Lisa and Papalolokai for the opportunity to share my mo'olelo with you folks. And so I'll turn it back over to Lisa. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa. It was amazing to see all those pictures of everyone. It's been a while, but we are scheduled until 11:30. So folks want to have questions or comments. Very nice to have Kamanaopono Crabbe as one of our Native Hawaiian Health Scholarship recipients. And as a matter of fact, he's kind of indirectly mentoring during this webinar. We do have an intern. I'm going to show his photo right now. He's actually calling in from Canada, and he's our intern until August, and he was assigned to help me with the webinars. And so this is Kainalu Nu'uhiwa, and he's a psychology student at UNLV who is interested in learning about engagement and network building. And he's from Honolulu and will be working with us on the speaker series. And so the reason why I'm showing you his picture is because the connection that he has in Canada is pretty spotty and iffy. So I told him that I would just share a picture of him so you know what he'd look like, and that when he talks, he's not going to have his video on. So I just want to invite Kainalu to have, if he has any questions for Kamanaopono, and just for a little bit of background, one of the projects that Kainalu is working on with us here is trying to really find out more about Kane in healthcare. One of the things that we noticed in our scholarship program that there was probably about 75% Wahine recipients and 25% Kane. And so one of our advisory council members, Malina Ko'ulukukui, wanted us to actually explore that a little bit more. And so I thought it was great timing that Kainalu came on board as our intern. And I said, look, why don't we develop a questionnaire to ask some of our male scholars what interest got them interested in the healthcare. And so then when Kamanaopono Crabbe was invited to be one of our guest speakers, I had them connect with each other. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kainalo for any initial questions right now. And then everyone that's watching is welcome to ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A feature. I did see one from Richard, but go ahead, Kainalu.
Aloha kako, everybody. Thank you for introducing me, Lisa. And mahalo Kamanaopono for sharing your life story and as well as your knowledge on the topic. That was very insightful. The main question that I would like to ask you is in regards to the psychology field in general for the Hawaiian community. While you were working in clinical psychology back beforehand, yeah, I wanted to know if you personally saw a lack or a significant need of psychological professionals within the Hawaiian community, whether that be psychologists or psychiatrists who were of Native Hawaiian descent, or in general, did we need more psychological professionals to address the Native Hawaiian community? And in comparison, now from back then to today, do you see, has that changed or is it still a significant need?
Mahalo Kainalu for that question. Back in 1992, when I applied and got into the program, there were less than 0.5%, like less than half of 1% of Native Hawaiian psychologists here in Hawaii. And even though there has been growth of Native Hawaiian psychologists, overall, to meet the demands of our community and the challenges, especially after COVID, I think we could use much more in the field. What I've seen grown since then, the 90s, I've seen an expansion of Native Hawaiians in psychology, but more in marital family therapy, and in social work, in public health, as well as in medicine. I think, physicians or medical school has always been strong because of the ʻiwi hoʻola program at the John A. Burns School of Medicine. And, the Native Hawaiian Health Scholarship Program it sort of has a broader kuleana to recruit and place Native Hawaiians throughout the health sector. And I think they've done a very good job, an excellent job in doing that. But as things go on, our disparities have not changed, and so it's where to intervene. I think having Native Hawaiian professionals or career pathway in health, as in nursing, as in medicine, as in psychology, are all very important. But I also will advocate, Ahakane in 2016 or so, 17, they received a grant to perpetuate Ho'oponopono, and through 4 kupuna, Earl Kava'a, Dennis Kawahi, Lahela Cruz from Hilo, and then Malina Kaulukukui. And for a good four years, they trained, and then they helped to elevate over 120 Ho'oponopono practitioners. So I think you need the combination of, Western trained people in behavioral health, as well as I think culturally trained Ho'oponopono practitioners to meet the demand of the broad issues that we have, especially some of the complicated issues, in families, domestic issues, family conflict, individual in terms of depression and so forth, and many others. Yeah.
Mahalo
I-
for sharing. Oh, Kaloi.
No, but what Lisa talked about is true. You know, not too many Native Hawaiian males enter the health sector, and I think that's a gap area. What's interesting, when at Akane they did a survey, and what they found is many Native Hawaiian men, preferred seeing a traditional practitioner than a Western trained health provider, whether it was a kupuna in Lomi or Ho'oponopono, something like that. And so, you know, I think as our people transition and going through this whole decolonizing process, you know, and we build up more capacity in the community for traditional healing practices, we're still gonna need Native Hawaiian males in the health career fields. Would be nice, other than just me, you, Keawe Aimoku, and others. Yeah.
Hi, mahalo. Mahalo so much. We received a question through the Q&A, and it asked regarding what you just mentioned too. Any thoughts on the efforts and potential for decolonizing psychology theory, research, and practice?
Well, I think that I remember with other Native Hawaiian and indigenous psychologists back in the 90s, we were talking about actually growing an indigenous psychology. And the reason why is because I was in contact with Maori psychologists from Aotearoa and then other Native Americans who felt the same, that the systemic sort of field of not just Western education, but in psychology, was overly Euro-American history and the development of psychology from their perspective. I think at an international level, with the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, has helped to advocate and pave a way for greater empowerment and autonomy of indigenous Native peoples throughout the world. And it's slowly making its way into education and academia. And I think it's not so much of decolonizing psychology, rather than it's more about kukulu ho, reestablishing, rebuilding, reasserting, reclaiming Native Hawaiian oihana ho'ola, reclaiming Native Hawaiian traditional healing practices, concepts, theory, like mana, like lomi, like la'au, lapa'au, and ho'oponopono, like aipono, and being able to show indigenous wisdom and knowledge through ancestral thinking and wisdom. But also we're able to document the parallel science of Ike Ku'una, that arrives at similar conclusions as Western science, but even greater in terms of the depth of knowledge. And that's the mana, that's the vai we have, that Western theory does not. So the more we learn about our own practices, traditional, customary customs, and knowledge base, the greater it empowers us. And then by that, you create a broader field, a momentum. And I think it's important for Native Hawaiians to have good relationships with other indigenous people, such as Maori, other Polynesian people, Tahiti, Samoa, Tonga, the other Micronesian states, because they have similar healing traditions as well as Native Americans in the continental US and in the First Nations people of Canada and around the world, literally. And it's happening now. I think the Hulihia is beginning. I think people like you, Kainalo, and the next generation, it's important to keep up that momentum and to continue to preserve our cultural knowledge and how we integrate it into our fields. Yeah.
Ay, mahalo for that. Mahalo.
Yeah. Welcome.
I feel like we're getting a lot more questions now too.
Oh, okay.
From the Q&A, we get so the general question for this one is in regards to as a CHW/CNN, yeah. Last year, this is Monica Crabbe. Regarding to Queen Olapono last year, our family therapist, yeah. Jillian Freitas, I believe is how you pronounce it. Psychology, left to live in Honolulu, working with families and individuals in our NH communities. I see there is a definite need for NH practitioners, therapists, and or Ho'oponopono practitioners. Has there been a movement amongst our NH intellectuals to encourage larger numbers of students to go in that direction?
In the direction of Ho'oponopono or the direction into family therapy?
I believe into either. We can go both routes.
Well, maybe it's the pathway. If the question is relating to intellectuals in academia, I don't think they made the connection of how to sort of integrate it within the university setting. I know Richard and Lynette was teaching Ho'oponopono out of the School of Social Work, and were able to graduate, I guess, Haumana out of their program, which is very rare. So I think that was a very successful model. Psychology, marital family therapy are still teaching the traditional Western way of psychology, but Akane, through their program of Ho'oponopono, has built capacity in the community. I think, with Queen Lili, currently they're called Queen Liliuokalani Trust, but before it was Queen QLCC, Queen Liliuokalani Children's Center. That's where the Pico was the beginning of Ho'oponopono, and they really supported it and getting it out into the community. So as that organization transitioned, there was a gap area, and so Ahakani filled that gap. And I think the current kumu are trying to provide experiences so that the existing Haumana are increasing their knowledge in practicing Ho'oponopono at a high level. You have like at a family community level, and then you have those that will probably advance into from just a practitioner to a more skilled haku or Ho'oponopono practitioner to handle difficult cases. So that's what I know that's happening. I'm not familiar with like the Native Hawaiian healthcare systems in terms of all of their programs, but I know they have a traditional kupuna council, and I think there have been attempts to try to integrate, traditional healing practices, but I think it needs to be increased, in my opinion, to provide both medical services, nursing services as healthcare, but also I think with traditional healing practices, it provides a greater, more comprehensive view of services. Yeah.
Ay, mahalo so much. Our next question comes from Sharla Nawane. She is a nurse working in Hawaiian and is asking for your mana'o regarding recommending. Oh, Kalamai, there's a lot of sirens outside right now. She's asking, what would be your recommendation regarding increasing or piquing the interest of Hawaiian Kane to join the healthcare field? As she does have the opportunity to reach out to these individuals, how would you advise her to go about that?
You know, I mean, you know, just engaging Native Hawaiian men, you trying to understand how they think, you know. So for like Ahakane, you know, we had a couple health conferences, and so to kind of incentivize them, you know, rather than getting them like, you know, and I'm not being prejudiced, but like, you know, women, they like purses or clothes or earrings or necklaces. For men, you know, we bought them like, you know, we bought the koi, you know, axes or chainsaw or chisels or give them wood, you know. I think you got to keep engaging them to see the need. I think they're out there. You just got to identify them. I think men do well when they see other men reaching out. So if you could partner with another male who can relate to, you know, other males on a grassroots level or talk male language, just like the love, communicate my love language, you communicate Kane language, you know. So that what we found was helpful is having other males talk to other Kane and talking to them about the importance, you know, of role modeling. Role modeling is one. You know, I know like me and Keave get tapped a lot to go to those kinds of talks, but I think it's needed, you know. But there are other practitioners out there, you know, especially in the cultural side. So getting like sort of the kupuna, you know, like Uncle Earl Kava'a, I think several hamana of him come from the west side, Waianae. So probably getting in touch with him and some of those males, like in Ho'oponopono, would be great.
Hello for your insight.
Well, as a matter of fact, did Kainalu tell you that he sees Uncle Earl Kava'a on a regular basis?
Oh.
Right.
In fact, I saw him just before I left for Canada.
Right. And I just spoke to him yesterday. Was it yesterday or the other night, Wednesday? Yeah, I think Wednesday night I spoke with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe that as well, where it's definitely a need for Native Hawaiian men, I believe, to see other Native Hawaiian men in that profession or in that scope, to see themselves being able to do that as well. Like,
right.
Our next question comes from Kamuela Kalai. What would you say is the potential for Haumano or students who want to get a hybrid degree of education regarding grounded traditional healing alongside a Western healing perspective?
I think there's great potential. I think I knew that I was kind of a maverick, and I think that's just how I was built. You know, I just wanted to learn both the Western side, but I think for me, I always question, how will this work with Native Hawaiians, whether that's cognitive behavioral therapy, or you know, behavior health models, or you know, applying it. And so I think that challenged me, or piqued at least my interest in learning um, traditional Hawaiian healing practices like Ho'oponopono, and which I felt made me a more comprehensive uh, psychologist or practitioner. Um, I think, or I probably would recommend that, like the Native Fund Health Scholarship, and like Imi Ho'ola in the John A. Burns School of Medicine is, I know they provide like cultural competent workshops and classes, but I think they should go a step further in providing actual training tracks, like actually try work with the community in in offering dual training, in the Western as well as with Native Hawaiian healing practices training, because I think that is it makes a better practitioner or a better health provider, but I think it also is a way of perpetuating our knowledge, and then the value it helps to elevate the value of traditional healing practices is a dual track, you know.
Hi, mahalo.
I have a question. So we just actually launched a new program called Kaliko Nui, which is kind of focusing on high school students. So what are your thoughts about that as far as trying to get folks engaged in healthcare at an earlier age in high school?
Actually, I support it very much, because I think you got to plant the seed early. And I think the research does show that if you do early recruitment, like in high school, but got to be consistent, throughout their time, and then ensuring that they have they know where the access or the opportunity is, and then helping them get into those fields, and I think it's necessary to help sort of pipe high the next generation, but also to make sure you're tracking them throughout the course of their development. I know the Native Hawaiian Education Association does a similar thing. They kind of have high school seminars or workshops, and then they matriculate them as they graduate, make sure they get into the university. In a way, it's a similar track model, but you're just making sure they go into the health career fields. Yeah. So I support it. I think it works. It's just getting them into which field that they're interested in.
Right. And I think one of the things that we acknowledged was that first generation college graduates, first generations that are going, and also those that haven't been exposed to their ohana being in healthcare, right? We want to reach out to those as well. And then we also recognize that we're Oahu centric, right? So those that are, on Oahu have access to a lot more resources. So how do we reach out to those on the neighbor islands that we want to encourage them, like, this is something you can do. We welcome you, right? So yeah, definitely something that we've been exploring.
I know, like University of Maui, Louis Hokoano, he's pretty progressive, so I know he's been supportive of training in Ho'oponopono there. and cultural practices. So, you know, and I think that, you know, it's utilizing or kind of having those conversations with those leaders who can affect change, or kind of, you know, they push the button and they can make things happen, is very important. And then I know at the University of Hawaii Hilo, as well as the Hawaii Community College, they have a strong cultural program. And I notice there's nursing, and there's is it pharmaceutical school there. So those are strong points, but the other areas like psychology and others aren't, you know, they may not be as strong. So kind of identifying the gap areas may be helpful, where you can make an impact, and then help build. Yeah.
Mahalo. So we're still taking questions, comments, feedback. I also wanted to, let's see if I can pull it up here. Where do I have it? Oh yeah, I'll share this photo from last night or from yesterday about CNHA. So you were on a panel yesterday with Keawe, Kealoha, and Dr. Sherry Ann Daniels was the moderator. So do you want to like give us a quick, you know, mana'o or summary of how that went yesterday?
Yeah, you know, we were on this panel for Mauli Ola, and I thought it was good. Because you have Keawe, who's at Department of Native Hawaiian Health, and then Kealoha, who's in the private sector with Aloha Care, and then, you know, I'm out in the community working with Kupuna and others. And I think what we learned yesterday was that health is not just your typical physical health. You go see a doctor. And I think there was pretty much a consensus that Mauli Ola is about ultimate health and well-being, and prolonging life and enjoying life as a whole. And our life, our health and well-being is impacted by, you know, our connection to the environment, or lack of connection to the environment, how healthy our families and communities are, and then how are we incorporating like aipono, good healthy eating habits and lifestyles, how, you know, exercising. It's sort of the same mantra of holistic, comprehensive training and healing and well-being. But we also know that the future of our health and well-being is contingent upon political action, or the access to aina, to land, to our preserving, perpetuating traditional healing practices, and providing that opportunity. And I think there's been tremendous growth in the past 20, 30 years, although there's much more to be done. And I think we all advocated on perpetuating or help building not just a traditional health system, but you still need both, sort of a balance of, you know, Western health services that can be more robust or a more comprehensive program by offering traditional healing practices and services like la'aulapa'au, lomi lomi, ho'oponopono, aipono. Yeah. So for example, one example I know of off the top is Kokua Kalihi Valley. You know, they've been incorporating aipono. They have different healers from the community, from the Micronesian, Tongan, Samoan, Hawaiian community. And then they also offer childbirth classes for expecting mothers and fathers, as well as they provide like traditional healing through their Ho'oulu Aina program. They grow with the community input traditional healing herbs that the community can go and get and see a practitioner. So they're doing great work. It's just we need more of it, Yeah.
Right, mahalo. Any other more questions or comments? So this actually ends our webinar year. So we do a webinar series from July to August. And so this year our theme was Ulu and Pilina, so growth and relationships. And then for our next theme for next year is going to be collaboration and reciprocity. So the idea behind that was actually kind of following the NHPI 3R collaboration where we collaborated with Pacific Islander organizations and agencies, and it just ended up being a successful model. So we kind of want to model that as well. So for our speaker series next year, we will try to incorporate more Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander panels together. To include our Pacific Islander relatives.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this past year we really tried to focus on being, age diverse, island diverse, topic diverse. So we really do try to take in consideration also what is the current events that are going on, and that might be hot topics, right, that folks want to talk about. So we try to plan ahead, but we also try to leave some room for last minute, oh, this is what's really buzzing on in the Native Hawaiian community. Maybe we should talk about this. So yeah. Go ahead.
There was one more question, but I wasn't too sure if we were gonna get to it, but I just wanted to bring it up really quick, if that's okay. Hi. From Peter Atara, what impact, good or bad, are social media and digital technologies having on the preservation of traditional knowledge and knowledge systems, on how we mentor, develop, and support leadership skills for our next generation of Native Hawaiians and other indigenous youth?
Oh, mahalo nui oe Peter no keia dinau. Thank you very much, Peter, for asking that question, because it's come up with a number of our kupuna. I think on the positive side, social media has been good in education, in educating others. And I was part of several webinars, and when COVID hit, it was a little difficult for me because I wasn't I wasn't comfortable teaching. I don't know who is out there, but the positive, I thought that it allowed cultural practitioners to share, educate, inform others of our community about chant, prayers, knowledge of mana, knowledge of Mauriora, Olakino, in our traditional practices. So I thought that was really good during COVID. I think a negative part is that, and it's been a conversation among practitioners that I'm networked with, is preserving ancestral knowledge. I think we're cognizant of this younger generation who has a thirst for cultural knowledge, but it's not in the traditional way of how we, for me, for example, I spent years and time side by side with elders or kupuna, which is a very indigenous way of mentoring and learning, face to face, time to time. And then I think now, because of technology, I noticed this younger generation have like a immediate, they want it now. They want to learn it now. And that I don't know if it's an expectation, but they just expect you to kind of give you all of your knowledge. And I know for myself, I'm not that way. I think, part of our cultural tradition and values, we have to be much more responsible of protecting, preserving ancestral knowledge, and that future learners go through this pathway of demonstrating you are worthy of receiving the knowledge, and you're worthy of the training, and then you commensurate that the completion of your training by going through traditional rites like a uniki, or like a graduation of getting your degree. I think that social media has opened the doors wide open for what we call wahahe'e, which is a slippery mouth. There are many charlatans, or the accuracy of cultural knowledge is, you have to really discern the source of who is teaching what. And what we have seen is that too much, people can be vulnerable if they don't know, if they don't do their homework and know who, like I said, the mo'okuauhau, the whakapapa of the person, and can be led in the wrong direction. My last comment is that I think it may be a problem or a concern that's happening not just in indigenous communities throughout the world, but I think it's happening as a result of there are people who don't have good intent, or they're experiencing difficulty, and they share it on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. And I think we've seen a lot of behavioral health, mental health problems in terms of depression, anxiety, and it's making it difficult to control. And I know that there are like online social groups, or like telemedicine. I think is good, but I think it's just, there has to be guiding principles and values on different platforms on how to use it. So I see good, but it's almost like the disadvantage of it is uh, definitely real. And then I know amongst us as practitioners, we have looked at it as sort of if not managed correctly, it's like a very negative mana force or mauli force, that can affect people and their thinking, their minds, and their well-being. So I think we have to be ordinarily vigilant about cultural knowledge and how it's shared. And actually, I think cultural knowledge, ancestral indigenous knowledge and well-being has a greater value to the broader population and communities in terms of the greatness of the healing energy we provide. So
Hi, mahalo.
Yes, mahalo nui. We are over time, and if you have to leave, ʻaʻole pilikia. Such a pleasure, Kamanaopono, to talk story with you one-on-one and hear your mo'olelo and recognizing all the kupuna. Some of us are very closely familiar with as well. We could sit here for another hour and talk story, I promise. But yeah, so Kalamai, our webinar series is actually starts in July. Wait, not July. So it ends in July. But we are taking a break in August next month to kind of get organized and plan out the speakers for the upcoming year. So our next webinar actually won't be until, they're usually the second and fourth Fridays of each month. So I think it'll be like September 9th will be our first one. And so just to mahalo everyone who's joined us today. I'd also like to give a special mahalo to Kamuala Kala'i and to Ka'imi Hanohano for being my back-end kāko'o, making sure that this is being recorded and we get all the comments and questions captured. So we will keep in touch and we'll send out the recording as soon as we have it edited. So malama pono, malama kikahi, ahui ho. We'll keep in touch, everyone. And then Kamana'o, if you can hang on just for a second.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay, ahui ho.
Mahalo.